Hello, folks. Welcome to Between Awesome and Disaster. This is your host, Will Carey. I appreciate you tuning in. I am back. Where have I been? I've been so many places. I appreciate you coming back. This is probably one of the longer hiatuses I've taken from the podcast in recent years, certainly since the start of the pandemic for sure. But I'm here back, and I'm here to talk to you guys about so many things I have seen and done. Where have I been? So first of all, my wife, Chelsea, and I were finally able to take our long-delayed, pandemic interrupted honeymoon trip, the one that we had planned on. Because originally, when we were going to get married in May of 2020, our initial plan was to have people vote on different honeymoons that we would take. But deep down, we had one particular trip in mind, which was to crisscross to a bunch of different countries in Asia and cities that we had not seen before. So when it came time and things opened up again, in a place where we didn't have to isolate and do COVID tests the way that we have for the last few years. I even remember having to take a COVID test to fly back to Argentina within the last couple of years. We were finally able to take the trip of our dreams, which included so many different places, but stopovers in Seoul, South Korea, Ho Chi Minh City, Singapore, Siem Reap in Cambodia, Bangkok, Thailand, Chiang Mai in Thailand, Hanoi, Vietnam, many different cities in Japan, Osaka, Kyoto, Tokyo again, Sapporo, Nara, a globe-trotting adventure that is unparalleled in my mind, and is going to be one of those like life-defining experiences that I know that I'm going to be talking about with my wife, and who's the reason that trip is so fun is because I got to do it with her, got to take in. But the of many things, and we'll dull them out over the course of a couple of intros here. But being in the DMZ of between North and South Korea, in the middle of a heavy snowfall, seeing Rent in Korean on New Year's Eve, racing through the streets of Ho Chi Minh City on the back of a scooter for a food tour. Walking and feeding elephants in Thailand, catching the sunrise at Angkor Wat in Cambodia, walking up and down temple stairs for several days on end, visiting Corgi in the Garden, a Corgi cafe in Bangkok, visiting shrines in Kyoto, including the Golden Pagoda, going to Nara and walking amongst wild deer that have learned to bow, jumping off of the swim platform of a boat into Halong Bay in Vietnam. Simply, like, my mind is exploding. My mind was constantly exploding from the sheer experience of it all, and that's something I've been thinking about a lot more and more lately. I'm at a point where, like, I'm trying to collect experiences, things I've done, places I've been, things I've seen, and that's sort of becoming like my currency for like a life well lived. And part of that is seeing and doing things that I never have. Sitting in an onsen completely naked with a bunch of other people in the shadow of Mount Fuji, staring at it. There are things that I never thought I was ever going to do growing up in a small rural community in southern Maryland. And to think of where I'm at now is truly jaw-dropping. The Studio Ghibli Museum in Tokyo, and the sheer the quirkiness, like everything about the museum is in line with the movies. The sheer joy of it all, of having seen it, of doing it. It's just remarkable. There's many things that I will take with me in my last dying breaths here on the surf, which hopefully won't be for a while. But those are one of those moments. So I have nothing but gratitude in my heart and a rejuvenated sense of purpose coming back to New York City and diving back into making podcasts and starting up. I don't know if I've mentioned this to you guys yet, but I did join a new band. We are in the beginning phases of working on our set. So I am very excited to be hitting the stage, playing music again soon. And I am excited and ready to get back into teching shows at the Pit, seeing my friends, being there for them, and having great conversations on this podcast. So thank you for your patience with me as I gallivanted around the world. It is not lost on me that the audience that I've built and the guests I've been able to have are in large part because of you. So thank you all very much again for being here. And we're coming back. This is our first episode of 2024. We've had some amazing guests in 2023. And we are starting 2024 with a longtime comedic peer of mine. My guest on the show today is writer and comedian Jason Saenz, who you might know from his prank poster project, Saenz. You might also know him from the G Word with Adam Conover on Netflix. And if you've seen his show, The Wheel World in Los Angeles, that is his newest solo performance, which he will be bringing back to the Lyric on June 8th and 14th. When tickets are available, they will be in the description, so make sure you come back and take a look at that. And the Wheel World specifically, we discussed quite a bit because a few years ago, Jason had an accident and has been living as a paraplegic for the last several years. And I had not really talked to him since this accident. And I was more curious in his transition as a performer after this accident, and specifically around his newest project, The Wheel World. And so we talk a lot about that. We talk some Screen Actors Guild membership things, and we also talk stand-up comedy and New York City, especially around, he tells me a great story of his experience of getting and performing at the Just for Laughs Festival for New Faces in Montreal. So if you want to find out more about what Jason's working on, you can go to jasonsaenz.com. That is Jason, SAENZ.com. That's got links to everything related to him. And if you are interested in learning more about this podcast, you can go to awesomedisaster.com for everything related to this podcast and to me, Will Carey, your actor, comedian, a bazillion different things. But let's talk to Jason Saenz. But kind of like what I was saying is like you remember those moments like so vividly, like those. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, did you know like right away when you met her on that show, you were like, someday? Was there that kind of instant attraction, or did that develop later?
I was instantly attracted to her. Sure, she was beautiful and funny, and played an instrument, which I thought was pretty cool. But no, I didn't know that she was the one until we actually started dating.
Mm-hmm. I asked that because I think you probably knew me in like my most emo phase of being a comedian in New York, where I was like very, very cynical. And now over the last few years, I am very much one of those love kind of people.
Good.
So it's just kind of like, I like hearing people's stories. And if anything, I think even though the pandemic kind of crippled my stage time, and I'm really in need of reps, but I feel like just more of a funnier person just in my everyday life.
I think it's always been my opinion that if you are happier, I think you're funnier. If you're in a better place in your life, I think you're if you feel like your life has good things to it, I feel like you have more of a joyful perspective, and I think that translates to better comedy. No one wants to see someone complain on stage. you
Yeah,
know?
exact. I do. I heard I was talking with someone and they we were talking kind of about like the processing of trauma and like painful things in terms of how you do it through art. And they said something really fascinating to me that I kind of think of now is like when you're processing like things in the moment, like the difference of like coming at it from like a scar or a wound. Like a
Mm.
scar kind of has a perspective and story, but a wound is like a very immediate thing that needs to be handled and addressed. So it's kind of like hard to be funny if you're like bleeding out, more or less.
Yes, for sure. I remember trying to do, go up on stage and do some open mics and do some shows right after a breakup of a long-term relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just angry. I was just upset and angry. That wound was still fresh, and I think it was, I probably should have gone to a therapist instead of making these poor audience members listen to me lament about a breakup. But yeah, that's a good analogy. I've never heard that before, but I agree. I've heard that um, tragedy plus time equals comedy, and I think that pretty much sums it up in a way
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense to me. I know it has recently with I've been through, but yeah,
Right.
I've definitely gone on stage too quickly and just vomited emotion, and not the place to do that.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of need to like be at peace with yourself before there's because the I feel like audiences pick up on that kind of stuff. Like if you're not in a good place, like the audience can't laugh at it. I
Right?
you know.
They
Um
feel bad for you. They feel sorry for you, sympathy for you. That's not what you're looking for. You're looking for an audience to find the humor that you find.
exactly. Like I definitely remember having those like 1 a.m. sets at the comic strip. Like you sit after you like sit around to do late night all night
Hmm.
and doing like some like of my like very kind of embittered material and the handful of people that are still there just owing and that's never a good
No.
response as a performer. You never want the audience to like you said feel bad for you. You're trying to entertain people.
Yeah, I remember I was, like right after I did like New Faces and I was getting booked around town more. I remember I had three pretty good spots that evening, and one of them was in Brooklyn, and then another one was at the Stand in Manhattan, and it was raining all night, and I was just miserable. And I remember when I got to the Stand, it was a small crowd, and the host was really dirty. Um, Up top, and so I just like made fun of him
Uh-huh.
when I got up on stage. And then when I got off stage, he was like, "Do you got a problem with me?" And I'm like, "No, no, I'm just in a bad mood. I've been running around the city doing spots in the rain, and I apologize. I never got booked on that show again. But that we're people. We have emotions. It's sometimes hard to check that before you go on stage. That's
For
definitely not
sure.
the first time that I was perturbed when I got up on stage, but um, you got to check yourself sometimes.
Yeah, like kind of put the performer's mask on and to me I like the stage as an escape from whatever else is going on. Sometimes it's helpful to just kind of have the act or your jokes that you have to do and that I find that nice. Because I want to trace this a little bit because we knew each other in New York and I want to catch up on this time because we knew each other, but I feel like I know you like I know you on stage if that makes sense.
Yes, agreed. Yeah.
So when did you do New Faces?
It was like 2014, I believe.
Okay, so I had moved to New York in 2010, so that's like 4 years after that. So that was we'd known each other for a few years then, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about kind of before I and then I kind of want to learn more about you as a person. Um, what is that process like? Because I did I've been doing spots in New York for a while, and I don't know if I ever like got close to that as a possibility. What is the process for anyone who is curious of getting new faces? And we're talking
Well,
about just for laughs, Montreal new
just for
faces.
laughs. Yeah. Well, at the time, I'm sure it's changed by now, but at the time there was a booker named Jeff Singer
Mm-hmm.
who he wore a little fedora hat, and he and maybe a couple other people booked the New Faces every year, and so different clubs would put on showcases for him,
Mm-hmm.
and basically you have to get in with a club to have them basically vouch for you enough to put you on this showcase.
Uh-huh.
Basically, on audition, clubs throughout the country do it, but New York and LA and Chicago probably the more. And I got my first audition um, was actually at the Stand, and I wasn't good with the bookers there at the Stand, but
Mm-hmm.
I think I was recommended enough, probably by Rebecca Trent at the Creek, and maybe some others. I know her for sure. That I was able to get my first audition at the Stand, which went very well. And then I had a callback audition at the Creek, where hardly anybody was at. Um, that just sometimes that's just the creek in the cave.
Yeah.
But so you have to do the same act again. And I did a little crowd work because there wasn't many people in there,
Mm-hmm.
and that got me the New Faces. I remember getting a call from Jeff Singer going, "Hey, I'm sorry, I was in the park for a birthday party and I got an unknown number, and someone answered and said, 'Hi, this is Jeff Singer with Montreal Just for Laughs. I want to let you know that we really, really, really didn't think you did well on your audition.'" And I go, "Really? You're calling me to say that?" And he's like, "Just kidding. Actually, I'm calling you to tell you got it." I was like, "You piece of shit. Is this what you do to everybody?" He's like, "Yeah, you got it. These are the dates. Make sure your contact information is correct." And I remember the last thing he said is, "Piece of advice: if you're dating somebody, don't bring them with you. This is for you. This is your festival. You need to be focused." And I said, "Sounds good," because at the time I had broken up with my girlfriend,
Mm-hmm.
longtime girlfriend. But by the time the showcase in Montreal came around, we had gotten back together, and I thought, what a great thing to bring her to Montreal,
Uh,
which in retrospect ended up being the nail in the coffin, because we broke up soon after we came back from Montreal, because I felt like I didn't have the best set. I felt like I could have done more or networked more. And I definitely put some of the blame on her, even though she
mm-hmm.
was my guest. But, that seems to be an overall arcing theme of mine, is that I, I tend to mix business with pleasure.
Uh-huh.
And, but that's the short story of it. I mean, during the time I was auditioning, I like would ask every booker I knew, "Can I just get 5 minutes?" Because that's all you get for this audition, is just 5 minutes, 6
Yeah.
minutes. So I'm auditioning. Can I get 5 to 6 minutes? So I was running the same set over and over again. Um, in fact, I ran my set in front of Louis C.K. at Cabin Bar.
Oh yeah, I
He
remember that
popped
show.
in, and then I was about to go up, and I see him in the back, and I'm like, "Holy shit, that's Louis C.K." And I'm about to go up.
Right.
So when I went up, I looked in that corner, and he wasn't there anymore. And I was like, "Okay," I relaxed. I actually had a pretty good set, and it turned out he just moved to the other corner of the room, and he
Uh-huh.
saw my set, but I didn't know he was watching me.
Right.
Um, and afterwards, he said, "Great set," and I was like, "Holy shit." This is before he started jerking off in
Right.
front of people. This is when
This
we
is back when
respected
this
Louis
was
C.K.
exactly right.
Yeah.
So that
So
was like a big deal.
that was a big deal, and that was like right before my auditions. So that kind of gave me a little boost of confidence. It's like, oh, I performed in front of Louis C.K. and he thought it was good. I think I can do this, and um, I did, and they brought the confidence into the auditions, and so it was a great experience. Definitely my first big showcase. So I wasn't mature enough at the time.
Mm-hmm.
to know how to handle it, because it's a big festival and it's a big show, and there's a bunch of agents and managers there and executives, and holy shit. So, like, long story short, I wasn't the guy that they all clamored to after the sets. They all went to go talk to Troy Walker, who is a really funny dude and a good dude, and we became friends from that festival. But he
Mm-hmm.
definitely had the set the night, and he was on Craig Ferguson like within the month. He was on TV.
Oh wow.
So that's how quickly those things can happen at that festival. But um, it was a big achievement for me, a big milestone in my career. Um, but then also it was riddled with personal grief with my girlfriend and
Right.
feeling like I didn't do my best at the festival. So there was a lot of, angst about it. Uh, a lot of people, I'm not going to name names, but some other comics like thought they had bombed when they got off stage and like couldn't be consoled. They thought they did such a bad job. They didn't, but
Uh-huh.
the pressure was just that so great that if you didn't slay, if you didn't murder, if you didn't kill, you failed. Um,
Right.
and the person I'm talking about actually went on to be a pretty successful television writer and producer. So
Mm-hmm.
it's, like, things can change. The careers shift gears and go into different directions. Um, to the chances of you becoming a well-known touring stand-up comedian are very small. But the skills you build as a joke writer and a performer can be applied to a lot of different things. And
Yes.
it took me until my mid 30s to realize, oh shit, I better switch gears or I'm going to be living paycheck to paycheck well into my adult life. And I don't want to do that anymore.
I know exactly what you mean. Like when I feel like when a lot of us like start going to open mics, that the only goal any of us have is become a headliner
Mm-hmm.
and tour. Like that's kind of the only thought we all see, and that's like, however many, like obviously there's national headliners, but however many are in like the cultural conversation at any given time, maybe a handful.
Yeah.
And then I also started thinking, as much as I love doing stand up, I see what like endless time on the road does, I think, to some people. And I hear like the name I keep thinking of is like this old like road comic, John Fox. I don't think he's alive anymore, but he was like, I think, the epitome of like the end game for that, like just endless nights when you're back in the whatever comedy
Yes.
condo in like
Yes.
North Dakota or Manhattan, Kansas, or what have you, and you're just like,
John Fox.
yes, yeah, that was his name. Is like, and it's just, and his entire act, I think, kind of just became like, oh, I had this girl back at the condo or what have you. But to your point,
Sure.
like, but to
Yeah.
your point, like I talk about this with musicians a lot too, like the skills, the transferable skills into other avenues of life that you get from being a performer, or even because I can't remember if you ever produced shows, but like the kind of
Mm-hmm.
like event planning and marketing,
Yeah.
writing skills,
Yeah.
all of this stuff that uh all of this stuff is very valuable in the greater sense of world, and also in the greater realm of show businesses as
Mm-hmm.
well. And how long had you been in New York when this started, when these things kind of started popping for
I
you?
moved in 2008.
Okay.
So that's 6 years.
And where are you from originally?
Virginia.
Oh, I don't think I knew that. So I'm from Maryland, so we're kind of from the,
The DMV, dude.
yeah. And when did you really start doing comedy? I'm curious if we know any of the same people.
I started doing comedy in college, kind of like, like I went to a small commuter school, George Mason in Virginia, and
Mm-hmm.
did theater there. Kind of met some friends there. Started doing some sketches. put on a couple shows, was a DJ on the radio network that they had there.
Mm-hmm.
So performing a little bit in college, but it wasn't until after college that I started, really getting into it. I joined the Washington Improv Theater, or WIT.
I've heard of them.
Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of alumni that are doing great right now. Rory Scovel is one of them. He has a HBO special coming out this week. And Aparna Nancherla is one of them, and Seton Smith, and just a whole list. I could keep going of great comedians, both writers, improvisers, and stand-ups that came out of Washington Improv Theater during the time I was there. So that's when I really decided that, like, I want to make this a career somehow. Even when I was working, full-time jobs still, but it was after college when I was with WIT that I decided that I wanted to really give it a shot and move to New York.
Mm-hmm. And were you a fan of comedy before you started doing stuff with WIT, or did that come later? Because I always kind of remembered you as like I always put you in my mind this category of slightly and not Andy Kaufman-esque, because mostly maybe because of the Saenz,
which came later. Saenz, yeah, which came later, yeah.
So but I also know you to be like a brilliant joke writer, and I've seen clips of, and I'll ask you about that later, your new show that you're doing, where you're doing like very personal driven, well written stuff too.
So what's the question?
My question was I'm curious, like, was there somebody or a show in particular, or a comedian in particular, that really got you like interested in like stand up specifically?
Stand up specifically, I mean, God, I hate to say it, but the first stand up I really enjoyed as a kid was Bill Cosby.
No shame in that. He's
a huge star. Yeah, everyone loved him back in the day. I think around like 8 or 10, I had a couple of his tapes that I really enjoyed because they're clean, and my parents had no problem with me listening to it. Yeah. It was in high school that I really, really like started to enjoy George Carlin and Chris Rock. And I don't know if Louis C.K. was at that point yet, but definitely George Carlin and Chris Rock when I was in high school. Just because I think they both, and I always wanted to be this type of comedian, but they always told the truth, their truth. Chris Rock being a Black American, and George Carlin being an anti-establishment comedian, and they were both really hilarious, but they also like had important things to say. Yeah. And they were definitely my two favorite when I really started to get into stand-up comedy in high school. Yeah.
Those two of the best to ever do it, for sure. Carlin's Jammin' in New York is still one of my favorite specials, because I just loved how he had those that mix of like, oh, why didn't I think of that kind of observations, and then that very insightful kind of political satire. I always found really, really interesting. What do you think of Chris Rock's newer stuff? Like, because I had been waiting for a year to hear all that material about the slap. So I was like on bated breath watching that show, which I thought that material those bits were pretty good. The stuff about the
the slap was pretty good. By that time that special came out, everyone had made jokes about it already.
Right.
So we're kind of like waiting for Chris Rock to officially tell us what he thought of it. And like, it was good, but like by that point we're kind of over it. And also Chris Rock had gone through a divorce and is kind of turning into a sleazebag a little bit. Like there's a little he's trying to date. He's talking about the jokes, that are too young for a 55-year-old guy to be saying. So it felt like a transition special for him as he's in his life that really didn't land like like Bigger and Blacker or Born Suspect or the ones that I listened to in high school, earlier stuff,
Never Scared. Yeah.
Never Scared. So, like it felt like a transitional sort of album from him as he was trying to find his new voice, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the Chris Rock in the Will Smith slap stuff, I think it was great. I also loved Kevin Hart's stuff on I don't know if you've seen it in his latest special, but he's just going how crazy can just creep up on somebody. Like Will Smith, you didn't think it would happen, but then all of a sudden he's like, "Keep my wife's name out your motherfucker mouth." It's like, holy shit, where did that come from? Like crazy just crept up on Will Smith. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was such a funny take on it. Like, yeah, we think this guy is pretty normal and sane, and then all of a sudden he's fucking flipped a switch and he's a crazy man, and he's, slapping people on television. I thought Kevin Hart had a great take on it.
I'm gonna have to watch that because I haven't seen that yet. There's a Kevin Hart bit that has become like a part of my wife and I's kind of banter, and I don't know if it ever got released publicly, but I happened to win tickets to see him at the Barclays Center.
Cool.
He was doing this. He did this joke about. I think the premise was that like Black women are inherently skeptical of anything you tell them. And so he did this bit of like, oh, I saw an orangutan, and the punchline is, an orangutan? Really? So I hear an orangutan really in my house pretty frequently. And I have no idea.
Kevin Hart's great too, man. It's just like he found his voice, and he knows what he knows what he's doing up there, which I think is great. Not the biggest fan, but he really impressed me with this latest special.
Yeah, I found in my 30s, I'm a lot more open to different kinds of stand-up comics that I probably would not have. I probably would have thought were too mainstream or their humor was too broad for a while. Like I really got into Gabriel Iglesias in the last few years. I really just enjoy his overall vibe.
Yeah, he's fun.
He seems like a
Fluffy
pretty cool guy. Yeah, Fluffy. Kevin James, brilliant. Stand up. I really like.
Does he have a new special?
I think.
Or is that coming out?
He had one on Netflix, I think, within the last couple of years. I definitely remember. I definitely remember liking it. And I'm also big on talking about some of these wit people. Like I saw John Mulaney at the Garden, and Seton was one of the openers. And
I
had one of those like crazy full circle moments where I was like, I used to do like tiny rooms in DC with this guy, and just be like, why isn't he doing bigger rooms? And then I see him in like one of the most famous places ever. It's amazing.
I was his improv coach for a class. I taught at WIT for a few classes, and he was one of my students. And eventually we both became stand-ups, but I just thought it was so weird. Like as I see his career going, I was like, holy shit, I taught him how to do, about improv and how to to do whatever level we were doing at the time. But Seton is I'm happy for Seton. I haven't talked to him in a while, but I think he was also on the Mulaney TV show that was a big dud.
I remember that.
Like good for Seton though.
Oh, absolutely. I just figure like at a certain point, like I love artistry, but I also like people working and doing things because I think that is a victory at a certain point as well. Like because life will continue to like just throw things at you, and then I think as long as you keep getting over them and keep doing the thing that you love, or like adapt and like you are writing or you're doing something else, that's very exciting to me.
I agree. I during the time that I got paralyzed in 2018, I was working for Steve Harvey. I was his social media manager, meaning that I ran all his social media, which meant that I had to write posts in his voice. And I think that, when I first told some of my friends that I had gotten a job as a social media manager for Steve Harvey, they're like, okay, but is that stand-up? And I'm like, no, it's not stand-up, but it's a good paying job in comedy, writing for a comedian.
Yes. A legendary comedian.
A legendary comedian. So what if your goal is to be a national headliner and a household name, then yes, that doesn't seem like it's on the path. But if your goal is to be a working writer and comedian and support yourself and a family eventually with that money, then that is on the path. And all my stand up, all my writing jobs in the past, my signs that went viral, like all that were tools and also like what am I trying and yeah, were tools that I used to get this job and to have this job. They all helped me get this job. And so, yeah, I'm not center stage and people aren't laughing at my jokes, but I got to work at the Universal Studios lot.
Mm-hmm.
He was filming his talk show at the time, and I got to be part of that. So it's like, if you're not open to where this life is going to take you and the opportunities it's going to take you, because you're so pigeonholed in what you think you need to be, then you're going to miss a lot of great opportunities.
I agree 100%. That's something that I had to come around to in my mid 30s, but I eventually got there. And honestly, being open to stuff has led to some very fulfilling and interesting experiences. Just if anything, like the opportunity to talk to. I've talked to so many different people here. I get to have more in-depth conversations with like I consider you a peer. We were around New York around the same time. All afforded through just being open to different things.
Yes.
I'd love to ask you, I imagine you get asked about the accident a lot. So I want to ask something a little bit differently. I'm more curious in the aftermath of your paralysis. What was adapting to being a performer and a writer or even a comedian after that?
It was definitely a challenge. As soon as I was back into the world, I started getting booked on a lot of shows I probably wouldn't get booked on if I wasn't a paralyzed comedian that people had heard about.
Mm-hmm.
And these are my friends that were booking, people I knew already that were booking me, but I don't think I made it to that echelon that there were of the people they were booking at that point. But the gratitude of their heart, they gave me a spot. But I didn't have any new material. I'm doing old Bumble jokes. I'm talking about, hey, you guys know when you're walking around town and you kick your toe gets stubbed, like that shit ain't gonna work. I'm in a wheelchair.
Right.
It doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't feel right to the audience. And so it took me several years to like start writing jokes about being in a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
And peppering them into the jokes I already had. And then eventually, like building a set that was purely talking about my life now. And that took years and years to do. And, like it's a sensitive topic. And so I had to learn to like ease my way into some of these jokes. Right. I can't immediately start talking about how I urinate now is by self-catheterization. Mm-hmm. I have to stick a tube up my dick like I'm docking with somebody with a spaghetti-sized penis. I can't lead with that joke. Thank you. I can't lead with that joke in my set because I have to warm up to it.
Yeah,
I have to tell some pretty vanilla wheelchair jokes up top. I have to kind of mention how I got in the wheelchair. I have to kind of set the stage, so to speak, so that when I start talking about more personal stuff, those jokes can land. And then eventually I wrote a whole hour show about it using that format of like, all right, here are some pretty easy, lightweight wheelchair jokes up top, but wait for it because we're going to get into some heavy stuff soon. And hopefully when we get into that heavy stuff, we're all on the same page and we all have the same attitude about it. We all can laugh about it together.
Yeah, you're almost kind of bonding with your the crowd a little bit, so that everybody's kind of like in it together, so to speak, performer and audience in terms of talking about the material, the subjects that you're going to talk about.
I think that's the only way I can do it now, because people in general know of paralysis, know of people in wheelchairs, but in general they don't know the nitty-gritty under the hood, what it's like living in a wheelchair. And so you can get away with some things. You know, like I can make jokes about hating stairs now because people get that.
Sure, yeah.
But, you know, when it comes down to, you know, what does not walking mean to my body and my health? What does it mean for my bathroom routines? What are all these things that people, you know, like television doesn't talk about, people don't talk about? You just see a guy in a wheelchair. You don't think about all the things he needed to do to get into that weird wheelchair and what he does in his house when people aren't watching, you know? So that's sort of like what I had to learn the hard way, you know, through my paralysis and my injury. And I think that's a good note in general for anybody who wants to talk about more serious things on stage, is that you can't lead with that stuff. I think most comedians know that you kind of leave that stuff to the end of the set, but it's how you present it. You want the audience to be at the same place you are when you present these things, you know, so that we all can, like you said, we all can feel like we're together in on it.
Yeah, exactly. Like you sort of like, there's a certain level of like those, because I watched a little bit of the clip, that joke about before I was paralyzed before I was 40, which is the age most men want to sit down anyway. Like that, like you ease the tension with that kind of a laugh, and then once, because laughter is in a sense like a release mechanism, so you get that, and then you can, like, once you have that relationship built, be like, oh, okay, here's like the stuff that you don't think about.
Yeah, I mean, that's the first joke I tell, and it's an easy joke because people can get it. I'm sitting in a wheelchair. I'm always sitting.
Yeah.
And I'm 40. Okay, we get, when you're 40 or older, you're tired. Well, thankfully, I got paralyzed when I'm 40, so I can be sitting down all the time anyways. Like, that is a laugh, an easy laugh that we all can have together, which lets the audience know, okay, he's not taking it so seriously. Maybe we cannot take it so seriously. And then, you know, in my show, The Wheel World, which, you know, I did twice at the Lyric Hyperion here in Los Angeles in January, and we'll be doing again in the summer. You want the audience to know that it's okay with me.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. And as we get further into the details, I'm still going to be okay with it. But things are going to be a little more personal.
Yeah. And how long have you been doing this show?
God, just this year. I mean, I started writing it in September. But I've only been doing the show since January. That's the first time I put it live on stage.
And how did those shows go? Because I follow you on Instagram, so it looked like it went pretty well. That's a great little theater.
It went great. It went really great. Both shows sold out, and which is nice. And there was, you know, doing a whole show live in front of an audience for the first time. There were a couple hiccups with tech. I forgot a couple lines and had to go back, which is fine. I think the audience knew that this was a work in progress, but I couldn't have been happier with how it went, and I couldn't have been happier with people that came out to see it. And some old friends I haven't seen since I've been paralyzed came out to see it. And friends I haven't seen in years. And I think that was just as good as the show was able to reconnect with those friends again and to tell them my story in a way that was funny but also very personal. And I couldn't have asked for a better way to debut the show.
That's great. That's great, man. And that's some of those great things that comedy can bring us. That I always try to remember when I'm a little burned out on too many sad open mic sets in a row. Just remember that feeling, and that's really cool. That's really cool, man. Well, I'm glad it's going well. I'm glad you're still gonna do it again. Do you have a date for the next show yet?
Yeah, I got 2 dates in June. I believe that it's. Let's see here. Since you ask.
Yeah, wanna get maybe sell some tickets. Help sell some tickets.
Hey! Let's do it.
Yeah.
June 8th, Saturday, June 8th, and Friday, June 14th at the Lyric Hyperion in Los Angeles. I'll be performing the show again.
Fantastic. June 8th, June 14th, the Lyric Hyperion.
You got it.
Excellent. Yeah, if you got a link, send it to me. I'll put it in the description. I just have
I don't have a link yet. Too far out.
Well, if you get closer, I can put it in much later. You just let me know, man.
I'll send you all that stuff.
I'm here for you. A couple other things I'd love to ask you before we get out here, because
sure.
You've been in. How long have you been in Los Angeles now?
Since 2015.
2015. So that's coming up on 10 years. I've been to LA a few times now, and I'm starting to get it a little bit. LA was this kind of like nebulous thing, and now I feel like I have like favorite spots around the city now.
Yeah.
Galco's Pop Shop is probably number one.
What is that?
It's this soda store up near, I think near Highland Park.
Okay.
It only sells like independently bottled, like you're not going to find it anywhere but here kind of sodas from around the world.
Yum.
So I always I don't drink a ton of soda, but when I'm in LA, I go and grab like
gotta
a box.
Get a cool soda from Jerusalem or something. I remember when I went to I was in choir in high school, and we did a competition in Atlanta, and on our day off we went to the Coca-Cola factory, and they had all the Coca-Cola flavors from around the world, and like Israel had like a fig Coca-Cola flavor, and like
Wow.
Africa had different Coca-Cola flavors, and it was cool just to try them. I was like, oh, some of these are gross, but some of them were really cool. But I'd love to go to this place in Highland Park.
Oh yeah, I'll pop the Google link over to you. I think
Nice.
I found it on BuzzFeed, so I think it's a known quantity in the neighborhood. What I also wanted to ask you, because in part of my preparation, I watched your I guess your current demo reel. So you just got off being on strike if you're in SAG-AFTRA.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, just as like a friend to friend here, no one else. This is just you and me.
Okay.
What was your process for getting that union card? Because I've been doing this for I've been performing for a really long time, and I feel like I need to start making moves to get in the union.
Well, it's being a stand-up comedian, you're probably not going to need to be in the union. But if you want to start acting and doing different things, then eventually you will. I've never been a 100% pure stand-up comedian. I've been a writer, an improviser, a performer.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing a lot of work with College Humor.
Uh-huh.
In New York, like doing bit roles and stuff and submitting scripts and shit. And it was through those networks of people that I eventually would, maybe get cast on a web series and maybe get cast on a show, a TV show. Adam Conover was part of College Humor, and eventually he got his own show.
Mm-hmm.
Adam Ruins Everything. And so I did an episode bit part in the first season of that show. And eventually, if you start doing these like union jobs, SAG's gonna call you and say, "Hey, you have to be a member now.
Mm-hmm.
You can't continue to work these union jobs without paying money to us and being in the union." And at first, it's like $3,000, and when you're just doing gigs here and there, you're like, "Shit, okay." But it's definitely been worth it now that I've been a member for several years. But yeah, you just start small, and eventually,
Mm-hmm.
the union comes knocking and says, "Hey, pay up."
Got it. So kind of just keep doing things, and then you'll eventually find yourself in that position. Is what
Yeah, I feel
you're
like
telling me.
SAG is such a big union when it comes to actors
Mm-hmm.
that eventually they're going to catch wind of you working. And if you continue to work in projects that are union, they're going to make you become a member.
Gotcha. And because that was always the biggest hurdle in my mind is like you got to work union jobs in order to join a union, but how do you get union jobs if you're not in the union? That was always the biggest mental hurdle for me is how
Yeah,
to,
you can get you can get union jobs without being a member, but eventually they're going to come knocking.
understood. I welcome the knock at this
The
point.
knock.
I want the knock. Sounds like a low budget script, like the knock.
It's SAG-AFTRA. Answer it.
Are you working on anything writing wise other than Wheel World right now?
No, that's it. I do a little social media for my wife's podcast. She's a co-host of a fitness podcast called The Dumbbells. So there's a little bit of social media work I do for that, but no, thankfully, I'm like able to just work on personal projects, and the one I'm doing now, which I hope to turn into some sort of money-making venture, is my new show, The Real World, because I don't think it's a story a lot of people are telling when it comes to paralysis in this day and age. And I think a lot of people responded. The audiences responded well to it when I first did it, but now I'm reworking the show for a broader audience that aren't just friends or friends of friends, so that I might be able to pitch or sell this as a special or maybe a travel show, something like that. But I know there's something worth pitching in this. But for the meantime, I just want to get it as good as it can on stage.
Amazing. I think, and I'm wishing you the best of luck with that, man, because I know your sense of humor, and I think your perspective and certainly with your experience and where your life is now, I think is certainly valuable and needs to be heard. And I think it would benefit a lot of people to hear it. Also, say you mentioned you mentioned a travel show. I think that would be a brilliant idea. As an avid traveler myself, I would love to see something like that. Like I would love to see you. Well, let me ask you this. Maybe this will be a good way to close out here.
Okay.
Well, I just got back from a lot of travel in Asia. Is there somewhere you want to go that you haven't gone yet? Like a country or a city?
Japan.
I was just in Japan. It's you'd love it.
I heard it's pretty accessible as far as the big cities go.
Yes.
I would. I mean, my wife. My wife is pregnant. She's due next month in March 2024, and we are talking about going with my brother and our baby at the end of this year around Christmas time, because she's read that like the 8 to 9 month age of a baby is perfect for traveling because you've gotten into a routine with them, but they're not walking around and running off yet.
That kind of makes sense to me. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're thinking about going to Japan. We've used a company called the Wheel World. I'm sorry,
No, that's your show.
I confuse this all the time because it's very close. Wheel the World
Uh-huh.
is a company that started in South America. A group of friends that one of them got paralyzed right before a big trip they were going to do, and they decided to take the guy anyways
Mm-hmm.
and figure it out as they went. And they actually ended up having a great experience and decided to turn that into an organization that can help people travel in wheelchairs. So we used them for our honeymoon to go to Rome and Venice and Florence and Paris. It was incredible because they deal with all the details. Is the hotel room accessible? Is the transportation accessible? Is everything accessible? And they have people in those countries that can translate. Because if I call Rome, I might find someone that can speak English, but will they be able to understand the like specifics I need
Right.
as a wheelchair user? And so this company, Wheel the World, is fantastic. They don't have too many guides in Tokyo yet, but what we've learned through them and the experience we had going to Italy and France this past summer, I think we can figure out how to go to Tokyo, especially if we're going with my brother, and he's
Yeah.
a strong young man that can help lift me places. That's where we want to go for sure. Hopefully this year, we'll see.
Well, I hope you get to do that because I love Japan's one of my favorite places I've ever been, and
Mm.
I'm just thinking kind of anecdotally, my experience in Tokyo specifically is that it's very accessible. I don't think you'll ever, it's certainly in the metros. I don't think you'll ever encounter a platform that you're not going to have an elevator or some
Mm-hmm.
other accessibility.
Great.
So I think, and also my experience of Japanese people as a whole is they're just like the most helpful and accommodating,
Yeah, the Italians were too.
lovely group of people. It's Tokyo's ama- amazing. It got a little piece of my heart.
Oh, that's great. Well, I've always wanted to visit Japan. I'm a big fan of their culture. My brother loves Godzilla, so he wants to go check out the home of Godzilla. So when we went to Italy, there were some times, especially in Venice, where we needed people to lift my wheelchair. To get in
Mhm.
and out of the boat, we needed people to lift me into the wheelchair in
Right.
Venice. And the Italians took their time. They were purposeful. They were communicative. They weren't in a rush. Unlike the American help I've received, where they rather be anywhere else than focused on my wheelchair and my body.
Right.
I felt totally safe when people lifted me in Italy because they were taking their time and they were being very focused. And if you feel like the Japanese are that way too, I know that if I get into a jam in Tokyo and I need some help from some people that are there, some locals, they'll be able to do it and with care, and purpose.
Yes. Most assuredly. So I can't wait for you to hopefully get to do that and hear more about it in the future. Real quick, because I did see that you're going to be a dad. So a huge congratulations to you and your wife, man. I'm happy for you.
Thank you. We needed a lot of fertility doctors to help us. And thank God that we had the money to afford to do it.
Right.
I was able to sue the skylight company that I fell through. And with
Oh,
that
wow.
money, we bought a house and we put some aside for fertility. And then we used that money for the fertility. And they got my sperm, and my wife, Erin, harvested her eggs. They put them together in a little petri dish, and then they implanted them in Erin, and she's been pregnant since July.
July.
And she's due in March. It's, the miracle of science is what I call it, because damn, it's a miracle. I would not have been able to get my wife pregnant without these doctors and this technology and this medicine. So
Right.
thank you for saying that. We're really excited.
I'm happy to hear that. I'm happy for you to have this thing and to have this growing family, man. That's fucking beautiful, and I'm happy
Thanks,
for
Will.
the both of you.
Yeah.
What else can we plug before we get out here, man?
Oh boy. Please check out my wife's podcast, The Dumbbells. It's a fitness comedy podcast. Uh, she loved the listens for that. You can in June, if you're in LA, please come to the Wheel World. On those dates in June, I forget them already. It's
8th
so
and the
far away.
14th.
8th and the 14th at the Lyric Hyperion. And if you want to see some of my acting chops that I've had in a wheelchair, check me out season 3 of Corporate on Comedy Central. I'm an episode called The Art of Shit Talking. And if you want to see me as FDR in a wheelchair, I'm in Adam Conover's new show, The G Word, which is on Netflix right now, in the Money episode, talking about the FDIC. And that was cool because they actually got like a replica FDR wheelchair for me to sit in. And even though it was very clunky and hard to move, it was cool to be in it. It felt like a freaking patio furniture. It was so huge.
Right. That's
but those
kind of
are
a
two.
trip.
Yeah, that's kind of a trip. But those are the 2 acting roles I've done in a wheelchair since I've been paralyzed.
Awesome. I saw that clip from the G Word. I think you nailed the essence of FDR for sure.
I listen to a lot of speeches. It's a commanding voice, talk like this, pronunciation is key, you know.
Exactly. Like you really deliver everything with a gravitas.
Got it.
I think you nailed it, man. Well, Jason, this has been really nice. I think this is the longest we've ever talked since we've known each other. So I'm happy for where you are and that we
Thanks, Will.
got to have this conversation. And let's make sure we talk again, but not in 2034. We could talk again before then.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Will. Good show.
All right, folks, that is the delightful Jason Saenz. If you are in Los Angeles, June 8th or 14th, keep an eye out for tickets for his next performances of his show, The Wheel World, at the Lyric Hyperion Theater. And you can also go to jasonsaenz.com. That is JASONSAENZ.com for all things related to Jason and what he's working on. And check out his wife's podcast, The Dumbbells, on HeadGum, wherever you get your podcasts. And I'm so happy for the both of them. I think they are going to make great parents, and I'm happy that they are where they are at in their lives and are doing things and passionate things, and especially that Jason is continuing to evolve and create excellent new works. And I look forward to giving him all of my Japan recommendations when they take that trip. So get at me, Jason. I have a lot of ideas for you and Aaron. So that's our show for today, folks. If you enjoyed this and think you know a friend who would be interested in it as well, you can send them to awesomedisaster.com. That is links to everywhere you can get the show. We are on Apple, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcasts. You can listen to Between Awesome and Disaster. I'm on Instagram at WillCarey23 and at Between Awesome and Disaster on Instagram as well. And if you want to go a little bit further in support of the show, you can check out our merch store, which is got a lot of great designs from my friend Mateus in Chile. Has done some incredible work for me. I always like to plug his excellent artwork that he did for our merch store. I also want to make sure you guys know we also have a Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/awesomedisaster for a lot of exclusive stuff that I do not do anywhere else. So thank you all again so much for being here. And 2024 is gonna, I don't know what it's gonna bring us, but I definitely know that my eyes are wide open and I am ready to work hard and receive anything that the universe brings me, and anything that I can make happen for myself. And I hope that you have a similar attitude as well. So thank you all again for being patient with me, and I will see you next time between awesome and disaster. Take care, everybody.